writing this from the master bedroom of a $12 million estate in Greenwich. But I have never felt more destitute in my entire life. I trusted my best friend, and I forced my husband to fire his assistant, convinced he was sleeping with her. The truth left me speechless, and now, the silence in this empty house is deafening. I accused the man I had loved for 25 years of betrayal while he was secretly dying of stage 4 heart failure. I let my toxic best friend, Linda, and my own greedy son convince me that Richard was hiding assets for a mistress. I humiliated him publicly. I slapped the woman who was actually his trustee, the only person trying to save me from financial ruin. I thought I was the hero of my own story, exposing a cheater. Instead, I was the villain who broke a dying man's heart in his final days. Now, I have the money, I have the house, I have the diamonds he bought me for an anniversary he never lived to see. But I would trade every single cent to take back the moment I looked into his sad, tired eyes and called him a liar. How do you live with yourself when you realize the love of your life spent his last breath protecting you from your own stupidity? Please, I beg you, tell me, 小雨静号零 2 hash is greater than, how do I forgive myself when he is no longer here to do it? My name is Aoife Anderson. I am 50 years old, and on paper, I am living the American dream. I am a full-time homemaker, though in Greenwich, Connecticut, we prefer the term domestic manager. I have been married for 25 years to Richard Anderson, a 52-year-old highly successful financial chief executive officer. We live in a $12 million gated colonial estate, surrounded by perfectly manicured lawns, old oak trees, and the kind of suffocating silence that only excessive wealth can buy. My son, Sean, is 25, currently living on his own, ostensibly working on business ventures that always seem to require just a little more seed money from his father. My life is perfect. My life is a lie. It was a Tuesday morning when the illusion first began to fracture. I was sitting at my mahogany vanity, staring into the lighted mirror. I leaned in close, tracing the fine lines around my eyes, the slight slackening of my jawline. I applied a layer of expensive moisturizer, rubbing it in with too much force. I am invisible now, I thought, watching my own reflection. A woman of a certain age, in a town where youth is the only currency that really matters. Downstairs, the house was deathly quiet. Richard had left for the office before dawn, as he always did lately. He said the fourth quarter was demanding. He said he was exhausted, but the way he avoided my eyes at the breakfast table, the way he flinched slightly when I touched his shoulder, those were the things he did not say. I picked up my phone, mindlessly scrolling through the local country club's social media page. That was when I saw it, a photo from last night's charity gala at the Pierre Hotel. Richard had told me it was a boring, stuffy affair, strictly business. He told me I would hate it, so I stayed home. In the photograph, Richard was standing near the champagne tower. He was wearing his custom charcoal suit, and standing next to him was a young woman. She looked no older than 22. She was wearing a sleek, emerald green evening gown that clung to every youthful curve of her body. But it was not her beauty that made my stomach drop. It was the way Richard was looking at her. He was smiling. It was not the tight, practiced smile he gave the camera for business profiles. It was a warm, unguarded smile, the kind that reached his eyes, the kind he used to give me. Her hand was resting lightly on his forearm, a gesture of possession. A cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. I zoomed in on the tag. Her name was Mia. I knew the name. She was his new junior assistant. hired 3 months ago to help with a special restructuring project. I closed the application, my hands shaking so badly, the phone slipped from my grip and clattered onto the hardwood floor. I took a deep breath, trying to push down the rising bile in my throat. I am overreacting, I told myself. It is just a work event. Richard is a loyal man. But the seed was planted, and the soil was fertile. 2 hours later, I met Linda for lunch at a French bistro in downtown Greenwich. Linda is my closest friend. We have known each other for 20 years. She is 50, a luxury real estate agent currently navigating the bitter aftermath of her third divorce. Linda arrived in a flurry of expensive perfume and righteous anger. She wore a sharp blazer and carried a designer bag that I suspected she could no longer afford. Since her divorce, Linda had developed a deep, venomous resentment toward the institution of marriage, and an even deeper entitlement to the wealth of others. She took one look at my pale face and ordered a dry martini. "Spill it, Ava," Linda said, her dark eyes narrowing. "You look like you just found a body in the basement." I hesitated. A part of me knew that sharing this with Linda was like throwing gasoline on a dying ember, but I was desperate for reassurance. I pulled up the photo and slid the phone across the white tablecloth. Linda stared at the screen for a long time. She took a slow sip of her drink, the ice clinking against the glass. The sound echoed in the quiet restaurant like a countdown. "Oh, sweetie," Linda whispered, her voice dripping with pity. "It is nothing, right?" I asked, my voice higher than usual. "She is just his assistant. It is a work function." Linda reached across the table and placed her manicured hand over mine. Her grip was tight, almost painful. "Eva, look at the body language," Linda said, her tone authoritative. Her feet are pointed directly toward him. That is a subconscious sign of attraction. And look at his shoulders. He is leaning into her space. Men his age. "Ava, Xiao Yu, Jing Hao, Ling." 2 hashes greater than they go through a crisis. They see the end of the road, and they want one last joyride. "Richard is not like that," I said, but the defense sounded weak even to my own ears. "They are all like that," Linda snapped, her eyes flashing with a sudden, dark intensity. "Do not be naive. You know how the real estate market is right now. I see this every day. Men in their 50s trading in their wives for younger models. They manipulate the finances, hide the assets, and leave women like us with nothing. You think your marriage is immune?" I looked down at my lap. My stomach was churning. Linda was projecting her own failures onto me. I knew that. But what if she was right? "Look at you, Ava," Linda continued, her voice softening into a toxic whisper. "You spend your days waiting for a man who does not even notice your new haircut. You are aging. Honey, we both are. And that girl in the photo? She has her whole life ahead of her. Do you really think Richard looks at you the same way he looks at her?" Her words pierced through my chest, striking directly at the core of my deepest insecurities. I wanted to scream. I wanted to defend my husband, but instead, I sat there in silence, letting the poison seep into my bloodstream. "I just want to protect you," Linda said, leaning back and finishing her drink. "You need to be smart about this. You need to secure your future before he takes it all away for some gold digger." I drove home in a daze. The familiar winding roads of Greenwich felt alien. The large oak trees that I used to find comforting now seemed to loom over the road like prison bars. When I pulled into the circular driveway of my $12 million home, it no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a stage set, and I was an actress who had just forgotten her lines. I walked into the grand foyer, the silence pressing against my eardrums. I looked at the framed family photos lining the staircase. A happy family. A perfect lie. I did not know it then. But Linda had just handed me the shovel, and I was about to start digging my own grave. The silence in our house that night was not peaceful. It was heavy, like a wool blanket soaked in ice water. I sat in the living room, the only light coming from the dying embers in the fireplace. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked rhythmically, each second chipping away at my sanity. It was past 10 o'clock at night. Richard was never late without calling. My phone lay on the velvet ottoman next to me. Silent. I picked it up every few minutes, checking for a message, a notification, anything to prove that Linda was wrong. But the screen remained black. Finally, headlights swept across the sheer curtains. I heard the heavy thud of the garage door closing, followed by the sound of the back door unlocking. I remained seated, my hands folded tightly in my lap to stop them from trembling. Richard walked into the room. He looked terrible. His face was gray, the skin beneath his eyes sagging with exhaustion. He loosened his silk tie as he walked, not even looking in my direction. "I am home, Ava," he muttered, his voice raspy. I stood up, smoothing the front of my silk robe. I walked toward him, intending to kiss him on the cheek, a habit ingrained over 2 decades of marriage. But as I leaned in, he flinched. It was a small movement, a slight pulling away of his shoulder. But to me, it felt like a slap. "I am going to take a shower," he said, stepping around me. "I smell like the city." He walked past me, and that was when I caught the scent. It was faint, clinging to the fabric of his jacket. It was not the expensive musk of the cologne I bought him for Christmas. It was a sharp, sterile smell, underneath something sweet and floral. It smelled like cheap lilies, an antiseptic floor cleaner. Why would a man who spent his day in a corner office on Wall Street smell like cheap flowers? I listened to his heavy footsteps ascending the stairs. A moment later, the pipes groaned as the shower turned on. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Do not do it," I told myself. "Do not become that woman. The woman who snoops, the woman who doubts." But the image of the girl in the green dress flashed in my mind. Linda's voice echoed in my ear. "They manipulate the finances. They hide the assets." I walked up the stairs, my feet silent on the plush carpet. The bathroom door was closed, the sound of rushing water muffling any noise I made. Richard's suit jacket was draped carelessly over the arm of the bedroom chaise lounge. I stared at it. It looked like a discarded skin. My hands were cold as I reached for the jacket. I checked the outer pockets first. Nothing but a lint roller and a pack of breath mints. I reached into the inner breast pocket. My fingers brushed against a piece of stiff paper. I pulled it out. It was a folded receipt. I unfolded it under the light of the bedside lamp. The logo at the top was unmistakable. Cartier. My breath hitched in my throat. I scanned down to the total. $25,000. $25,000 for a diamond tennis bracelet. The date on the receipt was today. The time was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I looked at the calendar on the wall. My birthday was 4 months away. Our anniversary had passed in June. He did not buy this for me. I felt the room spin. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I shoved the receipt back into his pocket, exactly how I found it. I backed away from the jacket as if it were radioactive. I retreated to the guest bedroom down the hall and dialed Linda. She answered on the second ring. He bought jewelry. I whispered, my voice breaking. There was a pause on the other end. Linda did not sound surprised. She sounded vindicated. How much? Linda asked. $25,000. I said, a bracelet. Oh, Eva. Linda Sihil. That is the classic guilt gift. Or worse, the keeper fee. He is keeping her happy. He is investing in her. But maybe it is a surprise for me, I said, grasping at straws. Maybe he is planning something. Linda laughed. A dry, humorless sound. Has Richard surprised you with anything in the last 5 years, other than his high cholesterol results? Linda asked. Wake up, Eva. He is not buying diamonds for his wife on a random Tuesday. He is buying them for the girl who makes him feel 25 again. You need to find out where that bracelet goes. The shower turned off. I hung up the phone quickly. I went back to our bedroom and pretended to be asleep when Richard came out of the bathroom. He climbed into bed, turning his back to me immediately. He did not say goodnight. He did not touch me. The next morning, Richard left early again. He said he had a breakfast meeting with potential investors. As soon as his car left the driveway, I opened my laptop. I had access to his iCloud account. We shared everything, or at least, I thought we did. I clicked on the Find My iPhone application. The little blue dot representing Richard's phone moved along the highway. I watched it, mesmerized. He was heading toward the city. But then, the dot exited the highway early. He was not going to the financial district. I zoomed in on the map. The dot came to a stop in a neighborhood called The Heights. It was a trendy, up-and-coming area full of converted lofts and artisanal coffee shops. It was young. It was vibrant. It was exactly the kind of place where a 22-year-old assistant would live. The dot sat there, stationary, at a residential address on West 145th Street. He was not at a meeting. He was at a house. I sat there in my silk pajamas, staring at the screen until my eyes burned. The denial that had shielded me for 25 years finally shattered. The crack in the foundation was no longer a hairline fracture. It was a gaping hole. And I was staring into the abyss. Richard was lying to me. He was spending our money on diamonds. He was visiting someone in a residential apartment during work hours. Linda was right. I was being replaced, and if I did not act soon, I would be left with nothing but an empty house and a broken heart. I closed the laptop with a snap. My hands were no longer shaking. A cold resolve settled over me. I was not going to be the victim who cried in the corner. I was Eva Anderson, and I was going to find out exactly what was happening in that apartment. I picked up my phone and dialed Linda back. You were right, I said, my voice steady and devoid of emotion. He is not at work. I heard the smile in Linda's voice when she replied, Do not worry, honey, she said. We are going to fix this, but you have to do exactly what I say. The drive from Greenwich into Manhattan usually took an hour, but today, every mile felt like a physical assault on my nervous system. I gripped the leather steering wheel of my Mercedes so tightly that my knuckles turned the color of old bone. The skyline of New York City loomed ahead, a jagged jaw of steel and glass, ready to swallow me whole. I had the receipt for the Cartier bracelet tucked inside my purse. It felt heavy, like a stone I was carrying to my own execution. I parked in the underground garage of the Anderson Financial Tower. The air down there was thick with exhaust fumes and the hum of ventilation fans. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror one last time. I applied a fresh coat of red lipstick, a shade called Victory. though I felt anything but victorious. I looked like a woman trying too hard to hold on to a fading dignity. This is it. Eva, I told myself, do not let him gaslight you. Do not let him make you feel small. The elevator ride to the 45th floor was silent and swift. When the doors slid open, I stepped into the hushed, sterile world of high finance. The carpet was thick enough to silence footsteps, and the walls were adorned with abstract art that cost more than most people earned in a decade. And there she was. Mia was sitting at the sleek, minimalist desk outside Richard's office. Seeing her in person was infinitely worse than seeing her in a photograph. In the flesh, she was terrifyingly real. She was wearing a navy blue pencil skirt and a crisp white blouse, her dark hair pulled back in a severe, professional bun. She did not look like a homewrecker. She looked efficient. She looked intelligent. She looked like the future. She looked up as I approached, her eyes widening slightly. "Mrs. Anderson," she said, her voice smooth and practiced. "We were not expecting you today. Mr. Anderson is in the middle of a conference call with—" "I do not care." I cut her off. My voice was calm, but beneath the surface, I was screaming. "I am going in." Mia stood up, moving to block my path. She was taller than me. "Mrs. Anderson, please." He gave strict instructions not to be disturbed. "The restructuring project is at a critical phase and—" "Get out of my way," I hissed, stepping around her. I did not wait for her to buzz me in. I pushed open the heavy double doors to Richard's office. Richard was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the gray city below. He held a phone to his ear, his posture rigid. When he heard the door open, he turned around. His face was a mask of irritation that softened only slightly when he saw it was me. He said something brief into the phone and hung up. "Ava?" he asked, walking toward his desk but not coming around it to greet me. He stayed behind the barrier of mahogany. "What are you doing here?" "I am in the middle of a crisis." "A crisis," I repeated, walking forward until I was standing directly across from him. "Is that what we are calling it now?" "I do not have time for riddles. Ava, the market is volatile, and we are moving assets around the clock. If you need money for the house, talk to my accountant." His dismissal was so casual, so routine. It stung more than a slap. He thought I was here for money. He thought that was all I was good for, spending what he earned while he played master of the universe. I reached into my bag and pulled out the crumpled receipt. I smoothed it out on the polished surface of his desk, sliding it toward him. "I do not need money. Richard, I need to know who is wearing $25,000 of my dignity." Richard looked down at the paper. His expression did not change. He did not look guilty. He did not look panicked. He looked annoyed. "You went through my pockets?" he asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous, low register. "Stop it," I snapped. "Do not turn this around on me." "Who is it for?" "Richard? It is not for me. My birthday is in November. Our anniversary was June. So tell me, is it for her?" I pointed a shaking finger toward the door, toward Mia. Richard sagged, rubbing his temples as if I were an unruly child he had to manage. "It is a business expense, Ava. A gift for a high net worth client's wife. We are trying to close a deal that will secure the legacy of this firm. Sometimes you have to grease the wheels." "You are lying," I whispered. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. "I saw the way you looked at her in that photo from the gala. I see the way she guards your door. You are sleeping with her. Richard laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. Mia, she is a child. Ava, she is brilliant. Yes, she is a financial prodigy. She is helping me navigate legal loopholes that would make your head spin. But she is an employee. Then fire her. I said. The room went silent. The hum of the air conditioning seemed to get louder. Richard stared at me, his eyes narrowing. Excuse me? Fire her, I said again, my voice gaining strength. If she is just an employee, if she means nothing to you, then get rid of her. Prove to me that our marriage is more important than your pretty little assistant. There are thousands of brilliant assistants in New York. Hire a man. Hire an older woman, but get her out of here. Today, Richard stared at me for a long time. I waited for him to nod. I waited for him to say, of course, Ava, if it makes you uncomfortable, she is gone. That is what a husband who loved his wife would do. Instead, Richard shook his head slowly. I cannot do that, Ava. The ground beneath me seemed to vanish. Sao Yu Jin Hao Lin, 2 hashes greater than what? I said no. Mia is the only one who understands the complexity of the trust structures we are building. She is holding the keys to the entire operation. Firing her now would be suicide for the project. Millions of dollars would be at risk. I do not care about the money, I screamed, finally losing my composure. I care about us. You are choosing her. You are standing there, looking me in the eye, and you are choosing her over 25 years of marriage. I am choosing logic. Ava, Richard shouted back, slamming his hand on the desk. I am choosing the future of this family. You are being irrational. You are listening to that toxic friend of yours. Are you not? This sounds exactly like Linda. Do not bring Linda into this. I spat back, tears finally spilling over my lashes. At least she listens to me. At least she sees me. She is poisoning you, Richard said, his voice cold and final. Go home. Ava, take a sedative. We will talk about this when you are not hysterical. But Mia stays. That is non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. I looked at him, really looked at him. He seemed like a stranger, the man I had built a life with, raised a son with, was gone. In his place was a ruthless businessman who viewed me as a liability and his assistant as an asset. I did not say another word. I turned on my heel and walked out. As I passed Mia's desk, she was typing furiously on her computer. She did not look up, but I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. Was it a smirk, or was I just imagining it? It did not matter. She had won. I made it to the lobby before my legs gave out. I collapsed onto a leather bench near the revolving doors, burying my face in my hands. The security guards glanced at me with pity. The weeping rich woman in the expensive coat. It was a cliché. I was a cliché. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was Linda. I am outside, she said. Her voice was the only lifeline I had left. I stumbled out of the building. Linda's red Porsche was parked at the curb, engine idling. She leaned over and pushed the passenger door open. I climbed in, the smell of her expensive leather seats and cigarette smoke enveloping me. Linda took one look at my tear-streaked face and put the car in gear. She did not ask what happened. She knew. He refused. Did he not? Linda asked as we merged into the chaotic traffic of Midtown Manhattan. He said she is essential. I sobbed, tearing a tissue from my purse. He said firing her would be suicide for the business. He called me hysterical. Linda. He chose her. Linda's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Her jaw set in a hard line. Of course he did, Linda said, her voice dripping with calculated rage. Men always protect their investments. And right now, she is his investment. You are just his overhead cost. I looked out the window as the city blurred past. I felt hollowed out. What do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I cannot go back to that house. I cannot look at him. You are not going back there tonight, Linda said firmly. You are coming to my place. We need to strategize. Strategize? Eva, listen to me, Linda said, glancing at me with intense, predatory eyes. Richard has declared war. He thinks you are weak. He thinks you will go home, cry into your pillow, and let him carry on with his little girlfriend. He thinks he can keep the wife and the mistress. It is the oldest trick in the book. She merged onto the highway, heading away from the city, away from my home. You need to stop thinking like a wife and start thinking like a business partner, Linda continued. If he is moving assets, if he is claiming this girl is essential to the money, that means they are hiding it. They are preparing for a split. Eva, he is going to leave you. And when he does, he will make sure you get nothing but the guest house and a pity allowance. He would not, I said weakly. Richard is Saoyutsing Haoling, de diez et supérieur ha. He is honorable. The man who just bought a $25,000 bracelet for his assistant while telling his wife she is hysterical, that man is honorable? Linda scoffed. Wake up. The Richard you knew is dead. The man in that office is an enemy. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. The image of Richard's cold face burned behind my eyelids. Non-negotiable. So, what do? I asked. Linda smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a general looking at a battlefield. We strike first, she said. We get a lawyer, not the family lawyer Richard pays for. My lawyer. We file for divorce. Eva, but before we do that, we secure your share. We force him to sell the big assets, the Connecticut house, the vacation home. We liquidate everything before he can transfer it to her name. Divorce? The word tasted like ash in my mouth. It is survival. Sweetie, Linda said, reaching over to pat my knee. It is either you or her. Who do you want living in that mansion next year? You or Mia? I opened my eyes and looked at the gray sky. A coldness was spreading through my chest, replacing the pain. It was a numbness, a hardening. Me. I whispered, I cannot hear you. Linda said, me. I said louder. I want it to be me. Good, Linda said. Then let us go get what is yours. I sat on the beige linen sofa in Linda's living room, clutching a glass of Chardonnay that I had not tasted. My hands were still cold. The adrenaline from the confrontation at Richard's office had faded, leaving behind a hollow, vibrating anxiety. The front door slammed open, startling me so much that wine sloshed onto my hand. Sean stormed in. My son, my beautiful 25-year-old boy. He was wearing a designer hoodie that cost $600 and ripped jeans that cost even more. He looked disheveled, his eyes bloodshot, his movements jerky and frantic. Linda had called him. Of course she had. Where is he? Sean demanded, his voice cracking. He did not look at me. He looked at Linda. He is still at the office. Sean, Linda said calmly from her armchair. She looked like a queen holding court. Your mother and I are strategizing. Sean turned to me then. I expected him to rush over, to hug me, to ask if I was okay. I expected the boy I had nursed through fevers and heartbreaks to be outraged that his mother was hurting. Instead, he began to pace the room, running his hands through his messy hair. "This is a disaster," Sean muttered. "A total disaster." "Mom, did you actually see the bracelet? Was it real diamonds?" "Yes," I whispered. "It was Cartier, $25,000. Sean stopped pacing. His face went pale. 25 grand. He repeated, "That is my money. That is my inheritance he is throwing away on some cheap assistant." I felt a sharp pang in my chest. "Sean, it is not just about the money. He is lying to me. He is betraying our family. It is exactly about the money," Sean shouted, his entitlement flaring like a match in a gas station. "Do you know what happens if he divorces you and marries her? Do you know how the law works? If they have a kid, 少于经好令, do a God. If they have a kid, the trust fund gets split. My share gets cut in half. Or worse, she convinces him to cut me out completely." He walked over to me, looming over the sofa. There was no sympathy in his eyes, only a desperate, feral panic. "You cannot let him do this. Mom, you have to stop being passive. You have to destroy her before she destroys my future." I looked at him, searching for the sweet boy who used to make me Mother's Day cards with macaroni and glue. He was gone. In his place was a young man drowning in debt I knew nothing about, terrified that his lifeline was about to be cut. But in my vulnerable state, I interpreted his panic as protection. I told myself he was angry for me, not just for his bank account. "We are going back to the house," Linda announced, standing up. "Richard will be home soon. We need to be there. We need to present a united front." "I am coming with you," Sean said. "I am not letting him spin this." We drove back to the estate in a convoy. When we walked into the house, the silence I had fled earlier was gone, replaced by a suffocating tension. We waited in the living room. Sean paced. Linda sat with her legs crossed, scrolling through her phone, occasionally reading out divorce statistics. I sat in the corner, feeling like a ghost haunting my own life. At 8 o'clock, the front door opened. Richard walked in. He stopped dead when he saw the three of us. His eyes swept from Linda's smug expression to Sean's aggressive stance, and finally landed on me. He looked incredibly weary. His shoulders, usually so broad and strong, seemed slumped under an invisible weight. "So," Richard said, his voice quiet, "this is the jury. Do not you dare act like the victim." Sean spat, stepping forward. He poked a finger toward his father's chest. "We know everything, Dad. We know about Mia. We know about the bracelet. Mom saw the receipt." Richard looked at Sean with a mixture of disappointment and exhaustion. "Sean, this does not concern you. This is between your mother and me. It concerns me when you are blowing my inheritance on a whore." Sean screamed. The word hung in the air, ugly and violent. I flinched. Richard's face hardened. "Watch your mouth," Richard warned, his voice low. "You do not know what you are talking about. You have not worked a day in your life, and you dare to lecture me on how I spend the money I earned. I know you are a liar," Sean yelled, his face turning red. "Mom is going to take you for everything. Linda has a lawyer. We are going to sell this house, and we are going to make sure you cannot give that girl a single cent." Richard looked past Sean, locking eyes with me. For a moment, the room fell silent. He looked at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. It was a look of profound sadness, He was waiting for me to speak. He was waiting for me to tell Sean to stop. He was waiting for his wife to step in and bring sanity back to the room. Say something. My inner voice pleaded. Ask him to explain. Ask him why he looked so sick. But then I felt Linda's hand on my shoulder. A light, guiding touch, and I heard Sean's heavy breathing, his anger filling the space between us. Tell him. Mom, Sean hissed. Tell him we are not stupid. I took a shaky breath. The gaslighting had worked. The seed Linda planted had grown into a forest of thorns. I want her fired. Richard, I said, my voice trembling but firm. If you do not fire her tomorrow, I am filing for divorce. And Sean is right. We will take everything. Richard stared at me for 5 long seconds. The light in his eyes seemed to go out. He nodded slowly, as if confirming a diagnosis he had feared all along. I see, Richard said softly. You have made your choice. You have chosen the parasites over your husband. Do not call my son a parasite, I shrieked. He is 25. Eva, he is drowning in gambling debts you do not even know about, and he is using you to get a payout. Richard said, his voice devoid of emotion now. And Linda? She is just happy to drag you down to her level of misery. Shut up, Sean lunged forward. But Richard did not flinch. He just turned his back on us. I am going to the guest room. Richard said, do not disturb me. I have work to do to save this family from itself. He walked out of the living room, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor. We heard him walk down the hall. We heard the door to the downstairs study open and close, and then the loudest sound in the world. Saütinghaling, två, click, the sound of the lock turning. He had locked us out, not just from the room, but from his life. See? Linda whispered in my ear. He is hiding something. He is scared. He is terrified. Sean agreed, pacing again, his energy manic. We have him on the ropes. Mom, we need to push harder. I looked at the closed door of the study. I felt a wave of nausea. I had just drawn a line in the sand, and my husband was on the other side. I was surrounded by my team, yet I had never felt more alone in my entire life. The spiral had begun, and we were all falling. The next morning, the sun rose over Greenwich, but it brought no warmth. I sat in the passenger seat of Linda's car, my hands trembling around a large manila envelope. Inside were photographs Linda had taken yesterday. She had hired a private investigator weeks ago. She finally admitted. She claimed she had done it for my own good. The photos showed Richard and Mia at a bistro near his office. They were leaning in close. Richard's hand was near hers. To a stranger, it looked like intimacy. To a wife, it looked like betrayal. Linda parked the car around the corner from the Anderson Financial Tower. She turned to me, her eyes dark and intense. You have to do this. Eva, Linda said, her voice hard. If you do not make a scene, he will sweep this under the rug. He will gaslight you until you believe you are crazy. You have to expose them. You have to blow it up so he has no place to hide. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sean. Live stream it. Mom, Facebook or Instagram. We need witnesses. If he touches you, we sue him. Do not let them silence you. I looked at the phone, then at the envelope. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I felt like a soldier being sent over the top of a trench, terrified but compelled by orders I could not disobey. I am scared. Linda, I whispered, do not be scared. Linda hissed, gripping my arm. Be angry. That girl is stealing your life. Go in there and take it back. I got out of the car. The cold wind bit at my face, drying the tears before they could fall. I walked into the building, my heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. The security guard, a man named Thomas who had known me for 10 years, stepped forward with a worried expression. "Mrs. Anderson," he said, raising a hand. Mr. Anderson gave strict orders. "No visitors. He is in a critical meeting with the board and the bank representatives." I did not stop. I did not look at him. I walked straight past the turnstiles. "Try to stop me, Thomas, and I will scream so loud the press will be here in 5 minutes," I said without turning around. He hesitated. That hesitation was all I needed. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the 45th floor. When the doors opened, the office was quiet. Mia was not at her desk. I heard voices coming from the main conference room down the hall. Deep, serious voices. I walked toward the double glass doors. Through the frosted glass, I could see silhouettes. Richard was standing at the head of the table. Mia was seated to his right, pointing at a projection screen. I pulled my phone out. My fingers felt numb as I opened the social media application. I pressed the button that said, "Go live." The screen showed my face, pale, eyes wide, lips painted that aggressive shade of red. I turned the camera outward. I pushed the doors open. They swung wide with a heavy swoosh. The conversation in the room stopped instantly. There were 8 men in suits sitting around the long oval table. They were serious men, bankers, investors, and there was Richard, mid-sentence, looking exhausted, and there was Mia, looking young and capable and hated. "Ava?" Richard said, his voice dropping to a horrified whisper. "What are you doing?" I stepped into the room, holding the phone high. I wanted the world to see. I wanted the internet to judge him. "Say hello to your audience." "Richard," I said, my voice shaking with a manic energy. "I want everyone to see what a midlife crisis looks like." I threw the manila envelope onto the table. The photos spilled out, glossy images of him and Mia. Richard's face went white. The bankers looked at the photos, then at me, then down at their hands in excruciating embarrassment. "Mrs. Anderson," one of the bankers began, standing up. "This is highly inappropriate." "Shut up," I screamed, turning the camera on him. "You are all covering for him. You are all part of it." I marched toward Mia. She remained seated, her face calm, but her eyes were wide with shock. That calmness infuriated me. It looked like arrogance. It looked like she knew she had won. "You think you can take my husband?" I yelled. "You think you can take my house? My son's inheritance?" Mia stood up slowly. "Mrs. Anderson, please," she said softly. "You do not understand. We are trying to help you." "Liar," I shrieked. I raised my hand and swung. The sound of the slap was sickeningly loud in the quiet room. It echoed off the glass walls. My palm stung. Mia stumbled back, her hand flying to her cheek, which was already turning a bright, angry red. The silence that followed was absolute. Richard did not move to comfort Mia. He did not move to grab me. He just stood there, staring at me, but the look in his eyes was not anger. It was not annoyance. It was death. It was the look of a man watching a burning building collapse with his family inside. He walked over to me, moving slowly, like an old man. He reached out and took the phone from my hand. I did not resist. He looked at the screen, saw the comments rolling in from strangers, the laughing emojis, the shock. He ended the broadcast. He placed the phone gently on the table. "Get out," Richard said. His voice was so quiet I almost did not hear it. Richard, Saoting too. I started to stammer, the adrenaline suddenly draining away, leaving me cold and trembling. You just destroyed everything. Ava, he said, looking right through me. Not just my reputation, not just this deal. You destroyed us. There is no coming back from this. He turned to the security guards who had just burst into the room, breathless and panicked. Escort her out, Richard said, and ensure she never enters this building again. He turned his back on me. He walked over to Mia, not to hold her, but to check the documents on the table. Ignoring the woman he had been married to for 25 years, the guards took my arms. They were firm. I was not a wife anymore. I was a threat. I let them drag me out. As the doors swung shut, I saw the bankers gathering their briefcases, shaking their heads. I saw Mia looking at me, her hand still on her cheek, her eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of pain. They looked like tears of pity. I was shoved into the elevator. The descent was fast. My stomach lurched. When I stumbled out onto the sidewalk, Linda was waiting. She had watched the whole thing on her phone. She was smiling. You did it, she said, grabbing my shoulders. You showed him. Now he has to settle. Now he has no choice. I looked at her. I felt sick. I felt a deep, dark chasm opening up inside me. I had wanted victory, but as I stood there on the cold New York street, listening to the city scream around me, I realized I had not won anything. I had just burned my own life to the ground. The house had never felt so large, nor so empty. It was a silence that had weight, pressing down on my chest until every breath felt like a labor. 24 hours had passed since the incident at the office. 24 hours since I had publicly humiliated my husband and slapped a woman who might have been innocent. Richard did not come home that night. He did not come home the next morning. Instead, a black van pulled into the driveway at noon. 2 men in gray coveralls got out. They were not movers. They were a specialized extraction service. They carried empty boxes and a clipboard. One of them handed me a letter. It was not from Richard. It was from his legal team. It was a notification of separation. It stated that due to the threat of physical violence and public harassment, Mr. Anderson would be residing at an undisclosed location. He would communicate only through counsel. I stood in the foyer, clutching the heavy cream-colored paper, watching strangers march up my staircase. They went into the master bedroom. I could hear the sounds of hangers scraping against the closet rod. I could hear the thud of his shoes being thrown into boxes. They were packing up 25 years of his life in less than an hour. I wanted to run upstairs and stop them. I wanted to scream that this was his home, that his smell was still on the pillows, but my legs would not move. I was frozen, trapped in a nightmare of my own making. My phone rang. It was Linda. I am coming over, she said. I am bringing help. She did not ask if I wanted company. She did not ask if I was okay. She just announced her arrival like an occupying force. When Linda arrived, she was not alone. Sean was with her, looking more agitated than I had ever seen him. And there was a third person, a man I did not know. He was short, with slicked back hair dyed a color that was too black to be natural. He wore a suit that was expensive but ill-fitting, and he carried a leather briefcase that looked like it had seen too many backroom deals. Ava, this is Marcus, Linda said, sweeping into the living room and gesturing for the man to sit on my velvet sofa. He is the best divorce attorney in the state. He specializes in high-conflict asset recovery. Marcus did not smile. He looked at me with eyes that were cold and calculating, assessing me not as a person, but as a case file. Mrs. Anderson, he said, his voice raspy, like he smoked 2 packs a day. We do not have much time. Your husband has already made the first move. He has locked you out of the accounts. Has he not? I blinked, looking at Sean. I tried to use the credit card to get gas, Sean said, his voice rising in panic. Declined. Both of them. Dad cut us off. Mom, he cut us off completely. My stomach dropped. I had not checked the accounts. He cannot do that, I whispered. He just did, Marcus said, opening his briefcase and spreading documents across the coffee table. This is a classic power play. He is starving you out. He wants you desperate so you will settle for pennies. He is funneling the liquid cash into offshore accounts or trusts that you cannot touch. If we do not act today, right now, you will be left with nothing but this house, and you will not even be able to pay the property tax on it. I looked at the papers. They were legal forms, petitions for divorce, restraining orders, and a document titled Power of Attorney. What is this? I asked, picking up the last one. It gives me the authority to freeze the remaining assets and liquidate what we can before he hides it, Marcus explained. Specifically, the real estate. I looked up sharply. The house? I asked. I am not selling the house. This is my home. Mom, listen to reason, Sean shouted, pacing behind the sofa. He was sweating. Despite the air conditioning being set to 68 degrees, he kept checking his phone, his thumbs flying across the screen. We need cash. I have. Sayu Jing Haoling. 2 hash is greater than I have expenses. Investments that are coming due. If I do not pay them, we lose everything. And we cannot fight a legal battle against Dad without money. Sean, what investments? I asked, a flicker of suspicion cutting through my fog. Crypto, Sean snapped, avoiding my eyes. You would not understand. The point is, Dad is going to bankrupt us to please that girl. Linda heard he is already looking at penthouses in Manhattan. In her name, I looked at Linda. She nodded solemnly, her face a mask of tragic concern. It is true, Ava, Linda said softly. My contacts in the city confirmed it. He is moving fast. He plans to leave you destitute. He wants to punish you for the live stream. The image of Richard buying a penthouse for Mia, using the money we had saved for our retirement, made bile rise in my throat. The anger returned, hot and blinding, masking the sorrow that had been consuming me. What do I need to do? I asked. Sign the papers, Marcus said, handing me a heavy fountain pen. We file for divorce on the grounds of adultery and financial abuse. We put the house on the market immediately. Linda has a private buyer lined up, an investment group. They are willing to pay cash. A quick close. No open houses. No neighbors gossiping. But the price? I asked. It is a fair market offer, Linda said quickly. Considering the market is crashing and the house needs updates, it is the best way to get liquidity now. I looked at the pen. It felt heavy in my hand. It felt like a weapon. I cannot think, I murmured, pressing a hand to my forehead. My head was pounding. The stress of the last 2 days was taking a physical toll. I felt dizzy, my heart fluttering in my chest like a trapped bird. Linda reached into her purse and pulled out a small orange bottle. Here, she said, shaking 2 white pills into her palm. Take these. It is just Xanax. It will help you calm down. You are having a panic attack. I hesitated. I did not like taking pills. Richard had always been the one to remind me to take my vitamins. To drink water, just take them. Mom, Sean yelled, his patience snapping. We do not have time for you to have a breakdown. Sign the damn papers. His voice was so harsh, so full of venom, that I flinched. I looked at my son. His eyes were wide and terrified. I thought he was terrified for me. I did not know he was terrified for himself. I did not know that the people he owed money to had given him a deadline that expired at midnight. I took the pills. I swallowed them dry. Within 20 minutes, the sharp edges of the room began to blur. The panic in my chest subsided, replaced by a warm, heavy blanket of indifference. The voices of Linda, Sean, and Marcus sounded far away, like they were speaking from underwater. Sign here, Marcus said, pointing to a line. I signed. Aoife Anderson, Saoud Singh Holing, 2# is greater than. And here, I signed again. And the house listing agreement. Here, I signed away the home where I had brought my baby boy from the hospital. I signed away the garden where Richard and I used to drink coffee on Sunday mornings. Good, Linda said, her voice sounding triumphant. The buyer is ready to wire the deposit. We will have the funds in an escrow account by tomorrow. Sean let out a long, ragged breath. He collapsed into the armchair, wiping sweat from his forehead. Thank God, he muttered. I sat on the sofa, the pen rolling out of my limp fingers. The drug was pulling me down into a dark, dreamless sleep. I watched the movers walk past the living room doorway, carrying Richard's golf clubs. They are taking his hobbies, I thought idly. They are taking his joy. I should have felt sad. I should have felt guilty. But the chemicals in my blood told me that nothing mattered. I was safe. Linda was taking care of me. Sean was safe. Linda walked over and draped a cashmere blanket over my legs. She smoothed my hair back from my forehead. Her touch was gentle, maternal. You did the right thing. Eva, she whispered, we are going to make him pay. Go to sleep now. When you wake up, you will be a rich, independent woman. I closed my eyes. The darkness swallowed me whole. I did not see Marcus exchange a look with Linda. I did not see Sean texting his bookie that the money was coming. I did not see the text message that lit up on my own phone. Lying face down on the table, it was from Richard. Ava, please do not do anything rash. I am trying to save you. Check the safe in the study. I left a letter. Read it before you listen to anyone. But I was asleep, and by the time I woke up, the message would be deleted. The safe would be empty, and my life would be irrevocably sold to the highest bidder. The tragedy was not that I lost my husband. The tragedy was that I sold him for a lie, and I thanked the thieves while I did it. The grand living room of our estate had hosted senators, charity galas, and 16th birthday parties. It was a room designed for celebration, but today, under the gray light filtering through the high-arched windows, it looked like a courtroom. I sat in the center of the velvet sofa, my body feeling heavy and disconnected. The sedatives Linda had given me yesterday had worn off, leaving behind a dull, throbbing headache and a dry mouth. My hands were folded in my lap, gripping a lace handkerchief. I looked at the people arranged around me like chess pieces. To my left sat Linda. She was wearing a blood-red suit, her posture rigid and predatory. She looked less like a friend and more like a general commanding a siege. Next to her was Sean. My son was vibrating with nervous energy. He kept bouncing his leg, the rubber sole of his sneaker squeaking rhythmically against the hardwood floor. It was a grating sound, like a countdown. Across from us sat Marcus, the lawyer Linda had brought in. He was spreading documents across the coffee table, arranging them with the precision of a butcher preparing his knives. We were waiting. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 3 times. The deep, resonant sound faded into the heavy silence. Then the doorbell rang. It was not a hesitant ring. It was a single, a firm press. Linda stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Let me handle this," she said, her voice tight with anticipation. "Do not let him manipulate you. Eva, remember the bracelet. Remember the disrespect." I nodded slowly. The anger was still there, burning like a low fever, but it was mixed with a strange, sickening sense of dread. Linda opened the front door. Richard walked in. The first thing I noticed was not his anger, nor his arrogance. It was his gait. He walked slowly, leaning slightly on a cane I had never seen him use before. His face, usually tanned from golf weekends, was pallid, almost translucent. His suit hung loosely on his frame, as if he had lost 10 pounds in 2 days. Behind him walked Mia. She carried a thick leather briefcase and a portable projector. She did not look at me. Her expression was solemn, her eyes fixed on the floor, and behind her walked a man who made Marcus look like a public defender. It was James Sterling. I recognized him from the society pages. He was the kind of lawyer who represented Fortune 500 companies and heads of state. His suit was immaculate, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, his presence commanding enough to suck the air out of the room. "Richard," Linda said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness, "we were beginning to think you were too cowardly to show up." Richard did not look at her. He walked past her as if she were a piece of furniture. He came to the center of the room and looked at me. His eyes were tired, surrounded by dark, bruised circles. "Hello, Eva," he said softly. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to throw the accusations in his face, but the sight of him stopped me. He looked, "Zou uitsing haling. 2 hekje is groter dan broken. Sit down," Sean snapped, pointing to the empty armchairs opposite the sofa. "Let us get this over with. We want the house sold, and we want the cash transfer initiated by 5 o'clock today." James Sterling stepped forward, placing a hand on the back of the armchair. "Mr. Anderson will stand," Sterling said, his voice smooth and deep. "And we are not here to negotiate the sale of the house. We are here to clarify the terms of the separation." Marcus stood up, trying to muster some authority. "My client has signed the listing agreement," Marcus said, tapping the papers on the table. "Under Connecticut law, as a joint owner, she has the right to force a sale to liquidate assets during a divorce proceeding. We have a buyer ready to wire the funds. If you block this, we will file an emergency motion for financial relief." Richard finally laughed. It was a dry, wheezing sound. "A buyer," Richard said, looking at Linda. "Let me guess. The Redstone Group?" Linda stiffened. Her eyes darted to Sean, then back to Richard. "It does not matter who the buyer is," Linda said sharply. "It is a cash offer. It secures Eva's future. It secures your commission," Richard corrected, his voice gaining a sudden, sharp edge. "And it secures a payout for Sean so he does not have to face the consequences of his own stupidity." The silence that followed was absolute. Sean stood up so fast his chair toppled backward, crashing against the floorboards with a violent clatter. His face was a mask of twisted rage, his eyes bulging, You shut up, Sean screamed, his voice cracking. You do not talk about my business. You are the one stealing from this family. You and that Sayu Ting Hao, Ling, 2 hash is greater than that whore. He pointed a shaking finger at Mia. Mia did not flinch. She did not even blink. She stood beside Richard like a statue carved from marble, her hand resting protectively on the leather briefcase. Sean, sit down, Linda hissed, reaching out to grab his arm. She looked nervous. Her eyes darted between Richard and the lawyer. James Sterling. She knew she was losing control of the narrative. I looked at my son. Sweat was dripping down his temples. He looked terrified. Why was he so terrified? If this was just about an inheritance, just about unfairness, he would be angry. But this, Sayu Ting Hao Ling, 2 hash, is greater than this, was the panic of a trapped animal. Richard, I said, my voice trembling. What are you talking about? What consequences? Richard turned his gaze to me. It was a look of profound pity that made my stomach churn. Ask him, Ava, Richard said softly. Ask your son why he needs $3 million in cash by Friday. Ask him who he owes. I turned to Sean. Sean, I whispered. He is lying, Sean yelled, backing away. He is trying to distract you. He is gaslighting you. Mom, just like Linda said, he wants to keep the money for her. Sean gestured wildly at Mia. Look at her, Sean continued, his voice rising to a fever pitch. Look at the way she stands there. She knows she has won. She has the bracelet. She has the apartment. She probably has the deed to the house in that briefcase right now. Linda stood up, smoothing her red skirt. She regained her composure, her face hardening into a mask of righteous indignation. Enough. Richard, Linda said, stepping between Sean and his father. We are not here to discuss Sean's personal life. We are here to discuss your infidelity. We have photos. We have the receipt. We have Eva's testimony regarding the neglect and emotional abuse. If you do not agree to the sale of the house and a 60-40 split of the total assets, we will take this to court, and we will drag your little girlfriend's name through the mud until she cannot get a job at a fast food restaurant. Linda smiled then. It was a cold, venomous smile, and given your position in the financial world, Linda added, I do not think the board of directors would appreciate a sex scandal involving a junior assistant. You would be forced to resign. You would lose everything. So, be smart. Sign the papers. Give Eva what she deserves. I watched Linda. I saw the greed in her eyes. It was not concern for me. It was a hunger. She was enjoying this. She was enjoying destroying him. Richard looked at Linda for a long moment. He did not look angry anymore. He looked resigned. You are right, Linda, Richard said quietly. I do not think the board would appreciate a scandal, which is why I briefed them this morning. Linda's smile faltered. What? She asked. I briefed the board. Richard repeated. I told them everything. I told them about the divorce. I told them about the blackmail attempts. And I told them about the Redstone Group. Richard signaled to James Sterling. The lawyer opened his briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He slid it across the coffee table toward Marcus. Marcus picked it up. He read it. His face went pale. He looked at Linda with sudden alarm. What is it? Linda asked, her voice sharp. It is a disclosure form. Marcus muttered. The Redstone Group. Sayu Ting Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than the principal owner listed, is not an investment firm. It is a shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. And the beneficiary of that shell company? Richard asked, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. Marcus looked at the paper again. He swallowed hard. Linda Vance, Marcus whispered. I felt the air leave my lungs. Linda? I asked, my voice barely audible. I turned to look at my best friend, the woman who had held my hand while I cried, the woman who had told me she wanted to protect me. You are the buyer? I asked. Linda's face turned a mottled red. It is an investment vehicle, Linda snapped, waving her hand dismissively. I was going to manage the asset for you. Ava, I was going to flip it so we could split the profit. I was trying to help you maximize the return. You were trying to buy a $12 million estate for $8 million using cash you borrowed from a hard money lender. Richard corrected her coldly. You were going to steal $4 million of equity from Eva instantly. That is not friendship. Linda, that is grand larceny. Liar, Linda screamed. She lunged toward the table, as if to grab the paper. But Sean stepped in front of her. Who cares about the house? Sean shouted, shoving Linda aside. He was shaking violently now, his eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. The veneer of the concerned son had completely cracked, revealing the desperate addict underneath. I need the cash. Sean screamed at Richard. Do you not understand? They are going to kill me. If I do not have the money by Friday, they are going to break my legs. And you are standing here talking about equity? You are sitting on millions, and you will not help your own son? Richard looked at Sean. His expression was unreadable, a mask of stone. I offered to help you. Sean, Richard said calmly. 3 times. I offered to pay for rehab. I offered to pay for your debts if you agreed to financial counseling and a job program. You refused. You said you could handle it. I handled it, Sean yelled. I just had a bad run. I just need one payout to get back on top. Richard shook his head slowly. No, Sean, you are not getting a payout. Not from me, and not from your mother. Sean lunged. It happened so fast. He grabbed a heavy crystal vase from the side table and raised it. His face twisted in a rictus of pure, unadulterated rage. He was not aiming at the wall. He was aiming at his father. Richard, I screamed, but Richard did not move. He did not flinch. He just stood there, watching his son with sad, tired eyes. It was the security detail that moved. 2 men in dark suits, who I had not even noticed standing by the foyer, burst into the room. They tackled Sean before he could take a step. The vase flew from his hand and shattered against the fireplace, exploding into 1,000 glittering shards. Sean screamed as they pinned him to the floor. He cursed his father. He cursed me. He cursed the world. Linda stood frozen, her face pale. Marcus, the lawyer, was hurriedly packing his briefcase, looking for an exit. Sterling, Richard's lawyer, stepped forward. He adjusted his cufflinks, unperturbed by the violence. Now that we have established the character of the opposing parties, Sterling said smoothly, perhaps we can address the accusations against my client. Mia stepped forward then. She placed the portable projector on the coffee table and connected it to her tablet. Mrs. Anderson, Mia said, her voice soft but firm. She looked at me, not with triumph, but with a deep, aching sympathy. You asked who the bracelet was for. She tapped the screen. An image appeared on the white wall above the fireplace. It was a design sketch, a delicate, intricate drawing of a diamond tennis bracelet. But it was not just any bracelet. The links were shaped like tiny infinity symbols, interwoven with small sapphires. My birthstone. I looked closer. At the bottom of the sketch, in Richard's handwriting, was a note for Eva, 25 years, to infinity and beyond. The breath left my body in a rush. I put a hand to my mouth. It was for our anniversary next month. Mia said quietly. He ordered it 6 months ago. He picked it up on Tuesday because the jeweler called to say it was finished early. He wanted to surprise you. I looked at Richard. He was looking at the floor, his jaw tight. But, Saoting Haling, 2 hashes greater than the apartment? I stammered. The girl in the green dress? The late nights? Mia tapped the screen again. A new document appeared. It was a medical report. The header read, Mount Sinai Heart Institute. Patient, Richard Anderson. Diagnosis, congestive heart failure. Stage 4. The room began to spin. The words blurred before my eyes. Stage 4. Mr. Anderson was not at an apartment with me for a tryst, Mia explained, her voice trembling slightly. The apartment on 145th Street belongs to Dr. Eris Thorne, a specialist in holistic palliative care. Richard goes there for treatments that he did not want you to see. The oxygen therapy, the drips. He did not want to frighten you. I stared at the words, congestive heart failure, and the restructuring project. Mia continued. It was not to hide assets from you. It was to create an irrevocable trust. The Eva Anderson Trust. She swiped to the next slide. It was a legal document, dated 3 months ago. The trust is designed to protect the bulk of the estate from creditors, lawsuits, and Saoting Hao Ling. 2 hash is greater than family members with addiction issues, Mia said, glancing at Sean, who was now sobbing on the floor, held down by the guards. Richard knew about Sean's debts. He knew that if he died and left the money directly to you, Sean would manipulate you into giving it to him, and the sharks he owes would take it all. Mia looked at me, her eyes clear and honest. I am not his mistress. Mrs. Anderson, I am the trustee. Richard hired me because my father was the lawyer who saved his company 20 years ago. I owe him everything. He trusted me to build a fortress around your money so that when he is gone, Saoting Haoling, 2 hash is greater than you will be safe. Safe from Sean. Safe from people like Linda. I looked at Linda. She was backing away toward the door, her eyes wide with panic. She knew the game was over. You knew? I whispered to Linda. You knew about the trust? Linda did not answer. She turned and ran. I heard the front door slam. I looked back at Richard. He was swaying slightly on his feet. He looked so tired. So incredibly tired. Richard. I sobbed, falling to my knees. Oh God. Richard. He looked at me. His eyes were not angry anymore. They were just sad. A deep, bottomless sadness that broke my heart into a million pieces. I tried. Eva, he whispered. I tried so hard to protect you. I wanted our last months to be happy. I wanted to give you the bracelet and take you on a cruise. I wanted to die loving you. He took a shallow, rasping breath. But you believed her, he said. You believed the worst of me. You live-streamed my humiliation to the world. You slapped the only person who was actually helping us. He turned to Sterling. I am done, Richard said. Get Sean out of here. Get the police for Linda. And Saoting Haoling, R. Jinghao Dayu. He looked at me one last time. I am going to the guest house. He said, do not follow me. I need to rest. And I do not think I can look at you right now. He turned and walked away, his cane tapping rhythmically against the floor. Tap, 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 fading into the distance. I stayed on my knees in the center of the ruined room. The vase lay shattered near the fireplace. My son was being dragged out in handcuffs by the police who had just arrived. My best friend had fled like a rat, and my husband, Saoyutsing Haling, 2 hashes greater than my husband, was dying. And I had spent his final days torturing him. I looked up at Mia. She was packing the projector. She paused and looked at me. "He loved you very much, Mrs. Anderson," she said softly. "It is a tragedy that love was not enough to create trust." She closed the briefcase and walked out, leaving me alone in the silence of my $12 million prison. The days that followed were a blur of legal proceedings and suffocating silence. The grand estate, once a symbol of our success, had transformed into a mausoleum. I moved through the hallways like a ghost, avoiding the rooms where we had made memories, for memories were now painful shards of glass. Linda did not get far. She was arrested 2 days later at John F. Kennedy Airport, attempting to board a flight to Tulum using a credit card she had stolen from another client. The charges piled up quickly: fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. It turned out I was not her only victim. I was merely the biggest fish in her pond of deception. Her face was splashed across the local papers, not as the glamorous socialite she pretended to be, but as a desperate grifter. The community that she had so desperately tried to impress turned its back on her instantly. She was erased from the country club roster before her mugshot was even processed. Sean fared no better. Richard kept his word. He refused to bail Sean out. My son was remanded to a state facility, awaiting trial for assault and reckless endangerment. The sharks he owed money to could not touch him in jail, which was, in a twisted way, the only safety Richard could offer him. I visited him once. He sat behind the glass partition, looking small and angry. He blamed me. He blamed his father. He took no responsibility. I walked away, realizing that the sweet boy I remembered had died long ago, consumed by entitlement and addiction. But the hardest part was Richard. He stayed in the guest house on the edge of the property. I respected his wish. I did not go to him. I sent food down with the housekeeper, trays that came back mostly untouched. I watched the lights in his windows from my bedroom balcony. A vigil of regret. Mia came and went. She was efficient, professional, and kind in a way that made my guilt burn hotter. She coordinated his medical care. She managed the final details of the trust. She did the things a wife should have been doing. One evening, a week after the confrontation, Mia knocked on my door. "He wants to see you," she said softly. My heart leaped into my throat. I smoothed my hair, checked my reflection in the mirror, not to look beautiful, but to ensure I looked humble. I walked down the stone path to the guest house, the autumn leaves crunching beneath my feet like dry bones. The room was dim, smelling of sickness and sterile oxygen. Richard was sitting in an armchair by the window, wrapped in a wool blanket. He looked frail. This strong, vibrant man I had married was gone, whittled down by disease and heartbreak. "Ava," he said. His voice was a whisper. I sat on the ottoman at his feet. I did not dare touch him. "I am so sorry." I wept, the words tumbling out of me. I was so stupid. I was so scared. "Please, Richard, forgive me." He looked at me for a long time. His eyes were clear, devoid of the anger that had been there before, but they were also devoid of the warmth I craved. "I forgive you for being scared," he said slowly. I forgive you for being manipulated. Linda is Xiaoyu Jinghaoling. 2 hashes greater than she is a predator. You are prey. Then let me come back. I begged, reaching for his hand. Let me take care of you. Let me fix this. He pulled his hand away gently. It was a small movement, but it created an ocean of distance between us. You cannot fix this. Eva, he said, trust is like a mirror. You can glue it back together, but you can still see the cracks. And every time I look at you, Xiao Jinghaoling, 2 hashes greater than I see the moment you stood in that conference room and broadcast my humiliation to the world. I see the moment you slapped Mia. I see the doubt. He took a breath, his chest rattling. I have made sure you are taken care of. He continued, the trust is solid. You will never have to worry about money. You will keep the house. You will have everything you wanted. I do not want the money, I cried. I want you. You had me. He said simply, for 25 years, you had me. And when it mattered most, Xiaoyu Jinghaoling, 2 hash is greater than you chose to believe a stranger over your husband. He closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the chair. I am tired, Eva. Please, go. I sat there for a moment longer, listening to the wheeze of his breathing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him and make him love me again. But I knew he was right. I had broken something that could not be mended. I stood up. I walked to the door. I love you, I whispered. He did not answer. I walked back to the main house, alone under the cold stars. I had secured my future, just as Linda had promised. I had the house. I had the assets. I had the victory. But as I walked into the empty foyer, the silence screamed at me. I realized then that the punishment for my doubt was not poverty. It was prosperity without purpose. It was comfort without companionship. I went upstairs to my room and sat on the edge of the bed. On the nightstand, in a velvet box, sat the bracelet. The infinity symbols mocked me. Infinity. I picked it up and fastened it around my wrist. The diamonds felt cold against my skin. They glittered in the lamplight, beautiful and hard and unfeeling, just like the life I had chosen. It has been 1 year since the ambulance took Richard away from the guest house for the last time. He never returned to the main residence. He died 3 weeks later in a private hospice room overlooking the Hudson River. I was there at the end, holding his hand, but he was sedated. He never opened his eyes to look at me again. He took the silence with him. I stood before his headstone, the black granite cold against my gloved fingertips. The cemetery was quiet, save for the biting wind that whipped my cashmere coat around my legs. The epitaph read simply, Richard Anderson, a man of vision. I was not alone. Mia stood a few feet behind me, respectful of the distance. She was no longer just an assistant. She was the executor of the estate, the gatekeeper of my life. She handed me a leather folder. The quarterly report, Mrs. Anderson. Mia said softly, the trust has performed exceptionally well. Your assets have grown by 8% this quarter. I took the folder without opening it. The numbers meant nothing to me. They were just ink on paper. How is Jean? I asked, staring at the grave. He is still working at the fulfillment center in New Jersey. Mia replied. Her voice was devoid of malice, just factual. He requested an advance on his allowance for a new car. I denied it. The terms of the trust are clear. He must maintain steady employment for 2 years before he receives any stipend. I nodded. My son was lifting boxes for minimum wage, learning the value of $1 for the first time in his life. It was a harsh lesson, but Richard had been right. It was the only way to save him from himself. And Linda? I asked. Mia hesitated. I saw her name on a court docket recently. Mia said, she is being sued by her landlord for eviction. She is working as a hostess at a diner on the outskirts of Stamford. No one in Greenwich will hire her. Justice. It should have tasted sweet. It should have felt like victory. But standing there in the cold, I felt nothing but a hollow ache in my chest. Linda was ruined. Sean was struggling, and I was the richest widow in Connecticut. I turned to leave. Mia walked me to my car. Thank you, Mia, I said, for everything. She looked at me, her young face wise beyond her years. Richard wanted you to be safe. Eva, she said, that was all he ever wanted. I drove back to the estate. The iron gates swung open automatically, welcoming me into my fortress. I walked into the house that Linda had tried to steal, the house Sean had tried to sell, the house Richard had died protecting. The staff had set dinner in the formal dining room. The table was mahogany, 12 feet long, polished to a mirror shine. It was set for one. I sat at the head of the table. The crystal chandelier sparkled above me, casting prisms of light onto the empty chairs. There was roast duck. There was vintage wine. There was absolute, suffocating perfection. I looked at the bracelet on my wrist. The infinity symbol glittered. I had let fear dictate my life. I had let a bitter woman whisper poison into my ear until I could no longer hear the beating of my husband's heart. I had traded trust for security, and now I had all the security in the world. I picked up my fork. The sound of silver scraping against china echoed through the cavernous room. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard. This was my punishment. This was my penance. I was safe. I was wealthy. I was right. And I was the loneliest woman on earth.